He called me a burden for asking if he could drive me to my chemotherapy appointment. Your body's already giving up, why should I waste gas? He said. My daughter laughed and said, maybe it's time you learn to let go. I walked 2 miles in the rain that day. But when I got home and found my meds replaced with sugar pills, I knew it was time to. Hi. I'm 58, and I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But it's real. Every word. I lived through it. And for anyone out there who's ever felt like a burden to the people they gave everything to, I hope this hits home. I live in Greenville, South Carolina, not far from where I grew up. I've been through cancer twice before. This last time, the third diagnosis, I knew I was running out of energy. My body ached in ways I can't explain. The chemo hit harder. And this time, I didn't have a home of my own. I used to have an apartment. Nothing fancy, just mine. But medical bills built up over the years. I had to sell my car last year to cover some treatment costs. After that, the rent became too much. I didn't want to ask my daughter for help. I really didn't. But I didn't have any other choice. Her name's Macy. She's 32. She works at a salon, part-time. She lives with her boyfriend Derek, who's in his late 30s. Derek's always given me bad vibes. The first time I met him, he didn't even shake my hand, just nodded and kept watching his show. Macy said he was just shy. Anyway, after my second relapse, Macy said I could stay in their guest room. I cried when she offered. I thought it meant she cared. I thought I was lucky. I was wrong. At first, things were just cold. I tried to stay out of their way. I cleaned the kitchen, folded laundry when I could, made sure I didn't touch the thermostat. I thought maybe if I showed I wasn't a burden, they'd treat me with kindness. But no matter how quiet I stayed, Macy got more distant. She stopped knocking before entering my room. She made snide comments about how I always looked tired. Once she even said, "You don't look sick. If you're gonna be depressing, at least put on some makeup." Derek was worse. He'd leave beer bottles around, then yell if I moved them. He once told me to shut up because I coughed during his video game stream. I told myself they were stressed. That they didn't mean it. But the day it rained, that changed everything. It was my chemo day. I had an early morning appointment. The weather was awful, pouring rain, wind, the kind that soaks you in seconds. I walked into the kitchen at 7 a.m., holding my little tote bag with snacks, a scarf, and my appointment card. Derek was sitting at the table eating cereal and scrolling his phone. I asked, very softly, "Hey Derek, would you be able to drive me today? The bus is running late and it's pouring." He didn't look up. He just said, "Your body's already giving up, why should I waste gas?" Just like that. Flat voice. No emotion. I stood there frozen. Waiting for Macy to say something. She'd heard. She was in the kitchen, making coffee. I turned to her and asked, "Did you hear what he just said?" She didn't even look up. She sipped her mug and said, "Maybe it's time you learn to let go, Mom." That's all she said. Like it was a life lesson I was supposed to be grateful for. I nodded. Quiet. I didn't argue. I just went to the front door, put on my old hoodie, and walked 2 miles in the rain. I was soaked. My bones ached. I couldn't feel my fingers by the time I reached the clinic. But I made it. Not because I wanted to live. Because I was angry. That night, I came home exhausted. My legs were shaking. I changed into dry clothes and went to take my meds, nausea pills, antibiotics, and pain relievers. All prescribed by my oncologist. But something felt wrong. The bottle looked the same, but when I opened it, the pills weren't right. They were plain white tablets. No numbers. No markings. Just flat chalky circles. I broke one open. No scent, no powder inside. It was a sugar pill. A fake. I checked the label. It was mine. But these were not my pills. I sat down on the bed. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. This wasn't a mix-up. Someone had dumped out my real pills and replaced them with fakes. And only 2 people had access to that drawer. Macy. And Derek. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up in bed with the lights off, listening to the sounds of the house. Derek laughing at his game. Macy watching some reality show. I sat there with my hands on my lap, staring at the wall, thinking, they want me gone. I used to think maybe they just didn't care. Maybe they were just selfish. But this? This was more than that. This was murder. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I waited. And then, I started planning. The next morning, I walked to the pharmacy and replaced the pills myself. I bought a lockbox from Walmart and kept the meds locked up from that point forward. I said nothing to them. Not a word. I needed time. I started writing everything down. Every time Derek yelled at me. Every time Macy ignored me or made comments. Every day I missed a meal because they forgot to make dinner. I wrote down the time, the date, what was said, what I saw. I even downloaded a cheap app on my old phone that could record audio. Sometimes I'd pretend to sleep with it recording on the nightstand. I caught Derek saying things like, she's barely alive anyway, and she's a waste of space. Once, Macy said, I checked the insurance, it's still in my name. I froze when I heard that. I'd forgotten. Years ago, I'd put Macy down as my beneficiary for a small life insurance policy. It wasn't much, $25,000, but enough to maybe help with funeral costs. I never changed it because I thought, well, she's my daughter. Why would I? Now I knew why I should've. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were trying to help it along. A few weeks later, Macy's car got repossessed. I guess she hadn't been paying the bills. She came storming into my room, screaming, you could have helped. I needed a down payment. You just sit here doing nothing while we carry your weight. I told her I had no money to give. Which was a lie. I had $2,000 hidden in the lining of my suitcase. Emergency money. But I wasn't about to give it to someone who thought I was just a paycheck waiting to stop breathing. She slammed the door so hard the picture on my wall fell. Later that night, Derek punched a hole in the wall outside my room. I didn't react. I kept watching. And writing. I started going through Derek's tablet one day while he was out. I knew the passcode. Same one he always used, Macy's birthday. I wasn't expecting to find what I found. There were messages between him and Macy. And not just nasty gossip. Real, ugly, criminal stuff. They were talking about me. About how much longer I'd last. About how Derek had swapped the pills again. About what they'd do after she croaks. Macy wrote, once she's gone, we can finally move. That house is a prison. That was when I realized they'd done this before. Probably more than once. I emailed every message to myself. Then I called someone. Her name was Carla. She was a lawyer for low-income seniors, working with APS. She listened. She asked for proof. I gave it to her. She said, if you're willing to be patient, we can make this bigger than a single report. We can expose them completely. I said, what do I need to do? She said, pretend like nothing's wrong. So I did. For 6 weeks, I stayed sick. I let Macy talk down to me. Let Derek ignore me. I smiled and thanked them when they threw leftovers my way. I even acted confused on the phone once so Macy could worry about my mental health. But every single word went into my notebook. Every single thing got recorded. And then, finally, we set the trap. Carla told me the best way to make sure Macy and Derek couldn't lie their way out was to give them a reason to act. Something that would push them into doing what we already knew they were planning. She said, we need them to feel like they're losing something. So we made a plan. I had a friend from church call the house pretending to be a lawyer's assistant. She left a voicemail saying, we just need to confirm the will changes for Ms. Walker. She's listed the First Baptist Women's Shelter as the new beneficiary. Please call us back. Macy heard it. I made sure she did. That same night, she knocked on my bedroom door. Smiling for the first time in months. Hey Mom, she said, real soft. How are you feeling today? I looked up. I said, tired. She sat on the edge of the bed. She hadn't done that since I moved in. She brushed my hair behind my ear, and I almost threw up. You know, she said, we haven't talked in a while. I miss us. I miss how things used to be. I didn't say anything. She kept going. I've been thinking, maybe we should take a little trip. Just you and me. Somewhere quiet. There it was. The setup. I asked, where? She smiled again. I don't know yet. Maybe a cabin in the mountains. Fresh air. You could rest. Derek was listening from the hallway. I could see his shadow under the door. They were getting desperate. The next morning, I got up early and walked to the Dollar General down the street. I bought a burner phone with the last $40 in my purse. I called Carla and gave her the full update. She said, they're going to act soon. Be ready. I asked, what if they try to hurt me before we catch them? She said, we won't let it get that far. 2 nights later, I faked a dizzy spell in the living room. I leaned on the wall and groaned loud enough for Macy to hear. She rushed in. Mom? You okay? I said, I think I need to lie down. She walked me to my room. Helped me onto the bed. I thanked her. She said, you should take your night meds. Want me to get them? I said, sure. She came back with the bottle. I pretended to take 2, but palmed them. When she left the room, I dropped them into a tissue and folded it up. The next morning, I took the pills to the pharmacy. They confirmed it, they weren't my meds. Again. I sent that report straight to Carla. That afternoon, Derek tried to talk. He said, hey. I know things have been rough. Macy's been stressed. I've been stressed. We both feel bad for how things went. I just nodded. Then he said, but we're still here. Taking care of you. That counts for something, right? I didn't respond. He leaned closer. You ever think about doing something for us? Before it's too late? I turned and looked him in the eye. What do you want, Derek? He laughed. Just saying. If you wanted to, rewrite some things. Clear the air. Make peace. I nodded again. I'll think about it. That night, I printed out a fake will that left everything to a made-up relative. I folded it up and left it halfway sticking out of my suitcase, like I was hiding it. The next morning, it was gone. I hadn't heard them come in, but someone had gone through my bag. I left the house later that day and met with Carla and Detective Mooney at the shelter's back office. They had everything ready. Warrants. Witness statements. Pharmacy records. Audio files. Text messages. Even video footage from a little camera they helped me hide in my vent, just in case someone tried to do something to my food or meds again. Carla said, it's enough. They won't be able to talk their way out of this. But then she looked serious. There's one more thing we want you to do, if you're okay with it. I said, what? She said, we want you to go back for 2 days. Let them believe the will change worked. Let them celebrate. That's when they'll slip. So I did. I went home. And what I saw told me everything. The house was clean. Like, clean top to bottom. The dishes were washed. The living room vacuumed. The guest bathroom had new towels. Macy said, I thought you deserved a nicer space. Derek grilled steaks that night. Actual steaks. First time I'd seen meat in that house since I moved in. We sat at the table together. Macy raised her glass. To family, she said. I clinked it. Said nothing. They thought they'd won. But what they didn't know was that the pills they left for me that night were already swapped out again, with fakes I made at Carla's office. I even left a new will in my drawer, clearly marked, with the church logo on top. I wanted them to take it. I wanted them to try something. And the next morning? They did. I came out to the kitchen and found my tea already made. It tasted off. Sour. I poured it out when they weren't looking and saved the cup. Derek said, everything okay? I nodded. Just tired. Might lie down. He smiled. That's probably for the best. I sent a final text to Carla. Then I went back to my room. And waited. About 2 hours later, there was a knock at my door. Macy stepped in. She had this weird nervous energy, like someone who wasn't sure whether to cry or celebrate. She sat on the edge of the bed, like before. You feeling okay? She asked. I nodded. Just tired. Queasy. She leaned forward and touched my hand. Maybe you should sleep a little longer. Her voice was soft. Too soft. Like she was watching every word. Then she added, don't forget your meds. I told her I'd already taken them. She smiled. Good. That's good. Something about the way she said it chilled me. Half an hour later, Derek came in, pretending to check on me too. I wasn't sleeping, but I kept my eyes shut. I heard him moving things around near my dresser. I heard a drawer open. Then I heard the crinkle of paper. The fake will I left was in that drawer. He left my room without saying anything. I waited until I heard the front door close. Then I got up and texted Carla, they took the bait. She wrote back, get ready. Officers are 10 minutes away. Now here's where the twist happened. Something Carla and I hadn't expected. Just before the police arrived, someone knocked on the front door. It wasn't the cops. It was a woman. Middle-aged. Dressed nice. I saw her from the hallway through the peephole. I didn't recognize her. Macy answered. I crept out of my room to listen. The woman said, Hi, I'm from Delaney Insurance. I'm here to speak with Ms. Walker about the recent beneficiary change. Macy froze. She said, she's not available right now. She's resting. The woman held out a file. I just need her to initial a final form confirming the update. You're her daughter, right? Macy nodded. The woman continued, the full payout value will be locked once she signs. Macy hesitated. She might be too sick to sign. Then Derek came to the door. We'll take care of it. We'll help her sign later. The woman stared at them both. Then gave a little smile. Okay. No problem. Thanks. She turned and walked away. 30 seconds later, there was another knock. This time, it was the police. 3 officers. Detective Mooney came in first, holding a file full of everything we'd built over the past few months. Derek immediately started yelling. What is this? You can't just come in here. One of the officers said, we have a warrant. Please sit down. Macy looked at me like I'd slapped her. You called them? She asked. I stood up, slow and calm. No, I said. They've been watching for weeks. I just opened the door. But then, Just as they started reading the charges, the insurance lady walked back in. Except she wasn't from Delaney Insurance. Her real name was Agent Rivera, and she worked with a state task force for elder fraud and financial abuse. That little visit? That was part of the sting. She looked at Macy and said, "We now have audio and visual evidence of you both discussing altering a beneficiary's signature while the policyholder was sick and possibly drugged. You want to explain that?" Macy lost it. "You set us up. You set us up." Derek screamed, "This is entrapment. You can't do this." But the cops already had the footage, the pills, the witness testimony, the swapped will, the voicemail, and the printed texts. Macy shoved a vase off the table and tried to run. She didn't get 5 feet before an officer took her down. But right before they dragged her out the door, she screamed something I didn't expect. She shouted, "You were never supposed to keep the baby." The room went dead quiet. The officers stopped. I blinked. "What did you say?" I asked. She was already in handcuffs. Crying now. Her whole face red. "You should have had the abortion like you planned," she said. "You didn't want me. You told Nana you hated being pregnant." I read it. I read it in her journal. I stood there frozen. Everyone else was quiet. I hadn't heard that word, abortion, since I was 25. I'd forgotten about those letters I wrote to my mother during my pregnancy. How scared I was. How alone I felt. I did consider it, once. But I didn't go through with it. And somehow, Macy found out. Maybe that was the crack. The root of it all. Maybe she believed I didn't love her from the start. I wanted to say something. But there was nothing left to say. They took her and Derek out in separate cruisers. One of the officers stayed behind to collect evidence. As I stood there in the silence of that broken home, the one I'd been rotting in for months, I realized something. It wasn't just about pills or wills. This was years of resentment. Of emotional rot. Of love turning into hate. And now it was finally out in the open. It's been 6 months since they were taken away. And I've had a lot of time to think. The trial started last month. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Lawyers. Strangers from the community who'd heard whispers about the daughter who tried to kill her own mother for insurance money. Carla sat next to me through every hearing. So did Detective Mooney. They never once made me feel like a helpless old woman. They made me feel like someone worth fighting for. The prosecutors came in strong. They had the texts, the videos, the audio. They even had the pharmacy tech who verified the sugar pills weren't just placebos, but dangerous if taken long-term. The stuff they used could have made my organs shut down slowly, especially paired with chemo. They brought in a handwriting expert who confirmed Macy had forged a fake will, one she tried to backdate to make it look like I'd signed it months ago. But the worst blow came when Rivera, the undercover agent, took the stand. She played the recording of Macy and Derek whispering in the kitchen, not realizing Rivera's purse had a mic in it. Macy's voice, clear as day. "If she dies this week, we could probably cash it by next. But only if she doesn't change the damn paperwork again. Derek, we just need her to sleep through one more night. I'll make the tea stronger." You could feel the whole courtroom go cold. Even the judge looked shaken. Their public defender tried to spin the usual excuses: mental stress, caregiving fatigue, financial strain. I didn't speak until the final day. When it was my turn, I walked up slowly, holding the cane I didn't really need anymore. I looked straight at Macy. She didn't look back. I said, "I gave you my whole life. I fed you when I had nothing. I worked nights, cleaned strangers' houses, and went without so you could have more. And when I got sick, you tried to finish what the cancer couldn't." I paused. The room was still. Then I said, "I don't hate you. I just don't want you near me again." And that was it. I stepped down. The jury took less than 4 hours to decide. Guilty. On attempted murder, fraud, elder abuse, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. Derek was sentenced to 45 years without parole. Macy got 32 years with no parole for the first 20. The judge looked straight at her and said, "You treated your own mother like a paycheck. I don't believe you feel any remorse. I believe you feel embarrassed you got caught." But here's the part that really brought the justice full circle. 2 days after the sentencing, I got a call from Carla. She said, "You're gonna want to sit down." Apparently, Derek's name was also tied to an old fraud ring from his 20s. One that the DA had been trying to trace for years. His prints showed up on some falsified medical equipment returns. So now he's facing federal time after the state charges. They're transferring him from state prison to a federal facility. He's already been attacked twice in holding. Word got out about what he did. Inmates don't like men who poison sick women. Karma moves fast in places like that. And Macy? She tried to appeal. Claimed emotional trauma. Blamed me. Said I was cold and emotionally unavailable all her life. But then someone leaked photos from her social media, vacation selfies while I was going through chemo. Drunk party shots the same week she told the court she was in mourning. The appeal was laughed out of court. She's currently at a women's facility near Columbia. From what I hear, she's isolated. No visitors. No calls. And since the life insurance policy was officially cancelled, she got nothing. Not a cent. But I still had one last thing to do. I donated that $2,000 I had hidden to a shelter for sick and elderly women kicked out by family. I also worked with Carla to file paperwork to formally sever parental ties. Something symbolic. My last act as Macy's mother. I left a one-sentence note in the legal file. I release you from my love. And I release myself from your poison. And me? I'm still here. Still in remission. Last scan was clear. My new home is small but warm. It's run by a retired nurse named Jolene who makes the best peach cobbler I've ever had. We sit on the porch some nights and just listen to the cicadas. I don't cry for Macy anymore. I don't ask why. I lived. They lost. And I finally learned the most important thing: sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's just surviving longer than the ones who tried to bury you. And I plan on living a long, quiet, peaceful life. Just to spite them.